Hey guys, Stu Darling from Unstoppable Force. Welcome to the podcast. Do you know what? I believe we can all break out of mediocrity. We can all reach beyond what we thought our limits were. And that's what we talk about on the podcast. We talk about being unreasonable. We talk about raising our standards. And we talk about delivering the ultimate sacrifice again and again. Welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Force TV. I am talking to Kat Corbett. Now, back in December, you might remember artificial intelligence started hitting the headlines. And Kat realized that she was going to have to change up her business. She was going to have to shift it from copywriting to something new. But then, 4 months ago, her house was destroyed during Cyclone Gabriel. She, her kids, the dogs, her husband got out of the house just as the cliff in the garden collapsed on top of the house. All of a sudden, she had to figure out not only a way of doing business, she had to figure out a new way of life. And this is the success story. Enjoy. Okay, welcome to this episode of Unstoppable Force TV. This is awesome. We have got Kat Corbett. Good morning, Kat. In New Zealand, we had Cyclone Gabriel a few months ago. And we probably all saw it on the news. I mean, I know that even the UK had it on the news. But when you live far away from those sorts of things, you think, oh, it was a bit windy and a little bit wet. It was slightly more than that, Kat, wasn't it? What happened to you?
It was a wild night and a really life-changing one. So we live in a small coastal West Coast community called Mediocrity on Auckland's West Coast. It's a very tight-knit community. And on the evening of Cyclone Gabriel, things were really calm. It was deathly calm at about 6 p.m. And I even sent a video to my brother who is on another coast, on the East Coast, just saying, look, everything seems well. My mum texted me not long after and said, just be careful. There's going to be a western wind sting that's going to come through and hit you guys. Didn't think much of it. The wind started to sort of get up at about 8 p.m. And then at about 10 p.m., my husband and I were just finished watching Netflix. I decided, we've got 2 young boys, 11 and 13. And I was feeling a little bit uneasy, so I just made them sleep in our room that night and had their beds on the floor. And we went up to bed and we were all getting ready. And my youngest said, Mum, what's that noise? And I just said, shh. And we just heard this enormous rumbling and cracking. It sounded like fire, but it was actually trees starting to come down the cliff because we lived under a cliff, effectively. And so I just said, it's a landslide, just run, just get out, we need to go now. And so we all ran down the steps. We got a double-story house. And as we were coming down the steps to the left of us, the debris was coming down about 4 meters away. And so we ran to the front door and we jumped into the car and we reversed down the driveway and drove up to our neighbor's house. The neighbor's friends were on the other side of the road. We kind of just sat there listening to what we thought was thunder. But what we would later find out was actually the whole cliff on our street was having landslides, was actually coming down. So everyone was being affected and we were told to evacuate immediately to the Surf Club, which is a distance away.
So just to clarify, the cliff didn't just collapse, it landed on your home.
It did. It landed in our garden and into the back of our house, yeah.
What was the first thing you thought?
When I heard that noise, it was terror. It was just absolute terror. It was my family. We were all together and I thought, this could be it. This could actually be us. But I acted really quickly, which was, thankfully I acted. My youngest son froze. And so I kind of had to pull him as we were running because people obviously react quite differently in those kinds of scenarios. And my husband was not, he's a lot more chill, and he wasn't moving very quickly, but I was like, we have to go. And so we got out.
You got to the surf club. next, because it's dark by now, what would the next morning? How do you begin to recover from something like that?
We were really, really shell shocked. We didn't really have clothes. We were barefoot. It was freezing. It was still raining. And what had happened overnight is the army had come through and evacuated 90% of the surf club, but we were upstairs sleeping, so we didn't know that everyone was being evacuated. So we woke up being told we needed to leave the surf club. We couldn't get our car out of the surf club because the surf club had flooded. And so we walked with the dogs and the kids barefoot and still storming to try and get out. And my dad came and picked us up and took us to their place. And we were like, well, this is it. We can't go home. We don't even know if home's there. And we just sort of, it was a real moment of shell shock and just trying to regroup and actually a huge moment of gratitude. Just so grateful that we got out, and that was the main focus.
How's that then shifted your view on life? I think quite often we don't, fortunately, really have the opportunity to experience those experiences. And coming from my time in the desert, my time in the military, yes, I did experience stuff like that. But I've said before on this show, I was trained to be ready for those things to happen. Tell me, tell me about it. I'm fascinated to know how you managed to cope with it. How did the children cope with it?
Well, it's really interesting. So, you kind of have this, and it sounds awful, but after a disaster, you have this kind of honeymoon period. And everyone is looking after you, and everyone wants to know how you are, and you're in the news, and you're kind of really supportive. But then what happens is everything goes back to normal. And for us, in our situation, we're in a really long holding pattern because we're living in a rental home because we can't go back to our house. It's been what's called red stickered, so we are not allowed near it at all. So we salvaged what we could out of it in a really short time period. But now we're sitting in this really awful limbo where we don't know if we're going to get paid out or how much we're going to get paid out for our home. Our insurance for our accommodation, our temporary accommodation is running out. So where there is this intense gratitude initially, I've tried, keeping that alive when you're in this state of limbo and not knowing where life's going. That's been really important to getting through. But there's been 3 other really important, tools or techniques that I've applied to my life to create a really positive space for the kids and to make sure that they are well and that they can get on with their life. And the first thing is really trusting that through something as chaotic and traumatic as what we experienced, there is going to be something amazing. And really believing that. The second thing is really just focusing on today. Because if we think about what we had, that's really sad, the loss that we've actually encountered. And if we think about what's going to happen tomorrow, there are so many scenarios and how that could play out that it causes a huge amount of anxiety. So I've gotten very good at living in the now and being grateful for today and only focusing on today and maybe my week. And then the third thing, and this kind of fell off the wagon, when the whole incident happened, I naturally was self-serving with food and alcohol. And that came to bite me really, really quickly. And I stopped drinking and I got my diet under control because that's all I can control.
So control what you can.
Control what you can in your world because you can't control what you can't control. And I think if you try and do that, the resistance goes up and you encounter more difficulty. That's how I see it anyway. And it's definitely been my experience.
I think, yeah, thank you for sharing, and yeah, I can see that it's still. I mean, it's still raw, isn't it? Because it's not that long ago. What about the kids? How are they? Yeah, how are you helping them cope? Because I mean, we know that kids are far more robust than we give them credit for. But when something like this happens, how do you create certainty for them?
It's really come down to how my husband and I have modeled our behavior. So we are trying to be relentlessly positive. We are normalizing our circumstances. We are very together. So a lot of not talking about, speculating about the future is a part of that, because at one stage I just wanted to go to Australia, and that wasn't an option for him. So that would cause a lot of tension. And then that has a ripple effect to the kids. So by being really present on today and just getting up and having a routine, and we do breakfast. I get up early with my eldest. We do breakfast. We have lunch together. I make his lunches. I drive him to school, to the bus for school, and come back. It's a very predictable routine for him, and calm, and being really calm. We also aren't sticklers for rules. We're not particularly strict. But that all seems to have helped them be happy with the space that they're in. And I said, so guys, it's been 4 months. Last night at dinner, I said, the 4 months, how are you feeling? They both gave me a thumbs up and said, we're good.
Awesome. I think there's almost a grief process to go through here, isn't it? That is of the 5 steps of grief that we only talk about when people die, but actually we go through it all of the time in these situations. It sounds, we spoke before we came on air about the first step of becoming an unstoppable force is being unreasonable, and too many people think about unreasonable being the negative side of it. Sounds like you've been living a positively unreasonable life for 4 months.
I've been trying to, I really have, because I don't think the alternative is an option for me. I don't want to let myself go there.
Good, good on you. And I love that, with the second step being you raise your standard. Actually, you're talking about almost at the moment that there is a standard that you have aligned with that allows a little bit more freedom. There are, yes, there are still rules, but we've relaxed them just a little bit because of everything else that's going on, just to help one another through. How's the community doing?
The crazy thing about this situation is everyone is in such a different predicament. The devastating thing is, there's 140 homes who are effectively can't go back. So families who can't go back to their homes. Out of those, about 80% are not insured. Not because they didn't have insurance. They had insurance. But it's because their land or home wasn't damaged by the landslide. They just happened to live in a dangerous spot, or an at-risk spot. So for them, they've got a very tricky time ahead, and a very uncertain time, and that's causing a lot of stress in the community, as you can imagine. So it hasn't been easy for a lot of people, and I think that uncertainty adds an exponential pressure.
Yeah, that not knowing, and as you say, living in the now is one way through it, but just being in that holding pattern is probably the most stressful thing of all for everyone.
It really is, and everyone deals with it really, really differently too. I know people that really aren't coping because they've got temporary accommodation that insurance pays for. They're also paying for a mortgage for a house that they can't live in, but that insurance payment is going to start running out as of next month. So they're faced with paying their rent and a mortgage, which makes it incredibly, it's almost untenable.
And is the support there? I mean, I don't want to get into the politics of all of this and what government or local government are and aren't doing, but is there support there? Or are you just having to figure it out?
there is a willingness and there is support. It's not so much for the accommodation side yet, where we've got a very organised community group who are trying really hard to make the government realise that people need support with their accommodation, and there is that recognition. The government did announce that they would be looking at financially supporting those who have lost their homes totally. So there is support. It's just a very slow moving beast. Yeah. Which just doesn't really help.
So I want to move on, but I want to call you out because my personal past experiences in stressful moments, it is too easy to eat and it is too easy to drink. And we know that, for many of us, many people, we drink in order to dull the uncertainty. We drink because it takes away the pain of that fear of that unknowing. To get yourself through that, kudos. Well done. However, wherever you found that strength, awesome. And I think, please take that, having been through the process, to actually sit back and go, actually, I now need to look after myself in order to look after other people. That's when you're in the fight, that takes a huge amount. And if congratulations is the right word, I will just say well done, thank you. So that was 4 months ago, and I want to move on to, because it wasn't just you've got your own business, and you're a copywriter, and you sort of concurrent to all of Cyclone Gabriel going on, artificial intelligence hit us like, well, just the next big thing, and that must affect copywriting. Well, in fact, I know it does, because it's AI is so easy to come by.
Yeah. So when ChatGPT really landed early December, we were on holiday and I started playing with it, and I was like, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
we might have a problem," because 90% of my clients are advertising agencies. They are notoriously rapid and early adopters of new technology. And I thought, there is some writing on the wall here for me. I need to make some changes. And I think we spoke just before, there was the AI and the Cyclone Gabriel made me realize that change was necessary, but what was I going to change? What was I going to do? And I know that for me, I'm really strong at strategic thinking, but I've never had the courage to position myself in that way. And going through what I've been through, I'm like, well, what have I got to lose? There's nothing to lose. It's just, it was kind of like an internal alignment that was almost saying, this is where you need to be and this is where you need to go. Two quite disruptive things to happen.
They're not sort of slightly more than quite disruptive, but so what have you shifted to then? Because I mean, even with my daughter, when she sends me her CV across to say, "Dad, I'm applying for this job," one of the first things I do is I'll just go and put it through one of the AI tools just to see what it spits out, to go, yeah, I agree, I disagree, or not. We've now got this tool at our fingertips. So what have you shifted to? What's your business become?
80 to 90% of copywriting is actually strategic thinking. It's about how you are positioned in a market, really understanding the transformation that you create as a business owner, and being really clear about who you target. And, it really amazes me, and I found it really difficult too, to really get definitive about who it is that you serve. Because often we think, I've got 10 different clients, and if I only talk to one, I'm going to lose all my business. But that's not the case. You have a much more powerful proposition if you serve and talk to one type of person. And so that's what I now help clients do, is really to, I call it distillation, what a 3-step process. It's distillation, transformation, and illumination. And the distillation process is about getting really clear on who do you serve, in the problem that you solve. The transformation process is then what makes you different and stand out because of the transformation that you create. And then the third part is illumination. And this is where the copywriting skills come in. It's how do you understand your audience and connect with them emotionally through the words that you use and through your messaging.
Is that something that, to me, that sounds like a very human-centric, the illumination part, it's a very human-centric task. Can AI do that? Or does, I sense that it still needs the human input.
I believe it really does. I think, you know, there's an authenticity that comes when you write your own messaging or your own copy. And yes, you can use AI for ideas, but if you just used it to generate your copy, it can be quite obvious that you've used AI to do that. Also, you know, people have been using AI to research a target market. And the problem with that is you miss out, if you're not talking to your customers and listening to what's holding them back, you lose the nuance. And then you sound like everyone else because everyone else is talking to the same problems that ChatGPT has just gone through and mined from historical data. So there's definitely that aspect. I mean, I'm all for making work processes faster, and I know some people aren't natural writers. So absolutely you can use and leverage AI, but it needs to be backed up by a really strong strategic position. And that is the difficult part. That is what I don't think AI can do, because when I work with a client, we go really deep on them, their values, their business.
Yes, I mean, it's another tool that we can use. And I've found it really, really useful for research. And asking smart questions and then being able to re-ask the same question. But it still comes back to, right, but what does that mean to me? How's that going to affect my client? So how's it going then?
Yeah, so the name of the offer is called The Peaceful Pipeline. And I launched on Monday last week, and it's been amazing. It's had a really good reception. The reason behind the word peaceful is that, you know, I think people being online, it can be really daunting for people. And a lot of that comes down to fear and confusion. You are really confused about who you serve, how you help them, how you stand out, what do you say? And so fear sets in.
Yep. Yes, I agree completely. So how do you do it? How do you simplify it? How do you make it peaceful for everyone?
It's getting them really clear on those three things. So really, who do you serve? How do you serve them? How do you stand out? And then how do you talk to your audience in a way that gets them to move emotionally, to recognize emotionally that you're the right person for them. You know, 10 tips on how to optimize your landing page for SEO. That's not valuable.
Why not?
Because there's someone, a mentor that I follow, and he says, you know, it's like an encyclopedia versus a best-selling novel. No one wants to read an encyclopedia. But if you position that content in a more emotional way that helps people solve their emotional problem or meet their emotional desire, not their practical problem, you're going to have a much more powerful outcome.
And with the experience of your AI in December and with your experience over the last 4 months, how has that changed you as a business person?
I think fundamentally, I have had to get really clear on what it is I really want. I've had to level up in a really big way because I got really comfortable in my agency, writing in my copywriting agency. I had built a team. I had really great agency clients and I was outsourcing work to them. And it was really scary to walk. I still have that as a business, but I've essentially walked away from marketing now. That's not what I'm leading with. And I've had to be very brave to step into this new space and say, I can help you with more than just the 20% words. I can fix a much bigger problem. And also being okay that I've got the experience and I'm fully qualified to be doing what I'm doing. And getting over that imposter syndrome has been huge. And actually just not caring about what people really think of me anymore, although that is a very natural place for humans to be. I feel like that's no longer holding me back.
Yeah, I mean, human beings we are herd animals. We want to be part of the tribe. But to step, I mean, that is what imposter syndrome isn't it? It's stepping away, it's being different. But your experiences over the last 4 months, you've really taken the opportunity in order to move forward. And yeah, the third step of being an unstoppable force is to determine your sacrifice. And the number of sacrifices you will have had to have made in the last 4 months is like huge. Are we nearly there? Is there light at the end of the tunnel with all of this?
I believe there is. I have to believe there is. Otherwise, I think I would go crazy. But I think having a relentlessly positive attitude helps in terms of how you perceive your environment and influence it to a large extent.
I think it's really fascinating that the next question that would normally come off my lips, and certainly as as a coach and a mentor, is what does life look like in 5 and 10 years time? But that's not a question I feel I can ask, because you're not there. You're living in the now. You're doing what you're doing what many of the great coaches and mentors talk about. They just say, well, just be now, because that's all we've got. What a great example.
I couldn't answer that question.
Yeah, okay, I won't ask it. That's fair enough. I just think it's absolutely fascinating to see having seen the pictures on the media and realised that was your house, and now to see you talking about your family and talking about where you've come. I think it's just such a great example of an unstoppable force, someone who is unreasonable, who understands your standards, and who delivers that ultimate sacrifice. Thank you so much for coming on and being so open, because I can see that at times it's got a little bit tense. So thank you for thank you for your honesty. Let's just wrap it up with the final question. And I did chuckle when you told me the answer. If you were a superhero, who would you be and why?
It's always been Storm from X-Men.
Tell me why.
She's powerful and can harness the elements, I guess, which is incredibly ironic. But I don't know, I've always just really admired her. She's always been a really strong figure. And I think especially back when X-Men were big, I was in my teens, female superheroes were unusual.
Mm-hmm. It's a fair point. Most people come out with Wonder Woman, and that's there's nothing wrong with that at all. But good to hear of another one. If people want to reach out for your help on the strategic end of things, how do we get hold of you? And I'll make sure it's written into the script for the show as well.
The best place to go is peacefulpipeline.com.
Okay.
About what I do, and you can contact me there, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Epic. So, and the links will be there, and you'll have access to Kat through Unstoppable Force TV. Kat, thank you very much for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation, and speak to you again sometime soon. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, but more importantly, I hope you got something from it. As I say to clients at our workshops, if you take one phrase from one sentence that was uttered during that podcast, then this has been of value. If you're looking for more content, jump across to www.unstoppableforce.co.nz or find us on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. If you enjoyed this and you want more, we are live across New Zealand at events and workshops, and sometimes in the US. If this has been valuable to become an unstoppable force, come along and reach beyond your limits.